Welcome to another episode Out of the Blank podcast. I have a past guest back on, but I have a good question for you. You ready for this epic question of mine?
Okay.
Do you believe in destiny?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your interpretation of destiny, though? Because I start to look at, like, we think of destiny as this paved path in front of us, this way that we're supposed to
Mhm.
go, the way that it's just going to, everything's going to align and we're going to land on this thing. But when does destiny hit you? When does that path come to you? So many people spend their whole entire lives trying to get on this path they feel is the right one, and then end up taking like a fork in the road. They go a different path with it.
Mhm. I think if you look at it through the spiritual level, some say that the day we were born, our destiny is already laid out for us, like in numerology or like astrology. But I think for me, I think my destiny was I just felt it. Like I started out as a kid, I think I would be a doctor. I really felt that it would be my destiny, but now I'm doing an entirely different thing that is not connected to it. And I think as you grow older, your destiny really changes. It really depends on you and how you would change it.
I look on like from what I wanted as a kid to what I want now. I feel like even if it's like about, making sure you never have to struggle, is your destiny this position or this thing that you want to work towards? Like, say, if I wanted to be a doctor for 30 something or 20 something years, and then I decide I want to start making hats. If I'm having a better time, like, would destiny, this position that's supposed to be given to you or supposed to be the place that you end up, does it necessarily make you happy? Does that consider it still destiny? Or is destiny something that only makes you happy and gives you everything that you could possibly want?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think, well, it is a saying here that whatever you are born with, it predetermines your destiny, right? So if you're born like in the lower in the lower society, then it is your destiny to be living that way. But some people, they have proven that it is possible to change that. Like for in my country, we have like shoemakers, no, shoe cleaners, and they become like this big businessmen, and they own like almost every shopping center here in the country. And I think it is really what is your calling that they say. I believe more in that than just settling for what you have.
Well, if I had to ask you, what would your prime belief be? I'm not talking about religion or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, but I'm talking about like what would be like something like, for me, I believe that we're all energy. I believe that there's
Mm-hmm.
probably like this give and take, if you have an amazing conversation or something like that, a positive energy, it's going to create a positive day for you. But then if you have like,
Mm-hmm.
let's say a bad couple of occurrences happen into your life, it kind of sets the tone of the rest of the day. I believe in that a lot.
Yeah, I believe in that as well. And I am somebody who is really interested in like spiritual stuff, like you say tarot, numerology and things like that. So sometimes the energy, you really feel it that they say that the alignment of the planets, they affect whatever it is that our energy is right now, right? And I think it uh, for me, for someone who is believing in spiritual stuff like that, I think it really affects whatever energy I am. So when I take a look at my reading for the day, let's say, and it says here that it it will be a bad day for you. So I will try my best to avoid anything that will um anything that will make my day any worse.
Yeah.
Let's say,
So what
yeah.
exactly is numerology? Is that just like being able to study using like certain numbers or certain codes? Like people have a lucky
Mm-hmm.
number. I've heard many people say like my buddy's lucky number 777. I
Mm-hmm.
is that what numerology is? I don't think I fully understand it.
I'm not. I don't really understand it fully, but from what I know, it's your numerology is based on the date of your birth. So if you add those up, it will the resulting number will determine what your personality will be and what your destiny will be, something like that.
That's interesting. I'm so bad at math, so anything that happens to do with numbers and numerology has number kind of in the name, so I've probably stayed away from it. But it's a concept of like, I mean, people talk about like when I hear people tell me a story about a psychedelic experience and being able to like really examine the world around them, it's all like ones and zeros. Everything comes into this like geometrical pattern, and I'm like,
Mhm.
it brings to a bigger point of like a simulation theory, but at the same time, I mean, we're all these working cogs in a machine. The fact that we're able to process so well together, and despite what you might see on some news, we're doing pretty damn well as people living on the
Mhm.
same exact planet. You know what I mean? And it's so interesting because people talk about what I would call a higher frequency or a type of vibration
Mhm.
that you give off. And some people spend years upon years meditating to be able to try and hit that frequency where everything slips into the system. I'm like, I just want Logan Paul or Jake Paul money. That's it. I want the $1 billion like these people that you see that are so successful. But then you start to wonder the question, just because you're rich in money, are you rich in the soul? And I think that's a bigger thing that's hitting me, I guess, a little bit more now that I'm getting older. I mean, I don't know what it's like over where you're at, but in the States, you know, depression is a major thing happening. And it's just like,
Mhm.
what's do you want money? Because money can buy away sadness for sure, but it doesn't buy
Mhm.
happiness. It doesn't create this overwhelming feeling that every day you're going to wake up knowing that you're happy, knowing that you're never going to have these bad thoughts.
Mhm. Well, I was part of the counseling group back in university. So what my professor said to me was that to an extent, yes, money can buy away our happiness, but people have what you call the saturation point. So there is a time that you spend all the money in the world and you still won't be satisfied with whatever you have.
Do you think that may be the best point, or like a good spiritual thing to try and reach towards would be trying to understand that they're just objects and not that they shouldn't have such a big part into your life? I feel like that's the whole point of like minimalism. Like people that just don't want
Mhm.
a whole lot of objects, they seem to be some of the happiest people because they know they can
Yeah.
just, because if you really think about it, I think you have to flip the script on a lot of things. Like if you talk about I have so much wonderful things, but then it's like, what happens if you have to move one day and then you have to get rid of some things to be able to move? People that are minimalist can just grab whatever they have, like a backpack, and be able to head out the door, rather than other people
Mhm.
that have to be like, well, I got all this in my garage, I got all this in my room. And it's like this weird point of like, is the amount of stuff you have hiding something, or is the amount of stuff you had what you consider valuable? Because if you're valuable as a person, it should be everything that's attached to you, not things that you can pick up in your hands.
Mhm. Um, well, I have seen many stories of like super rich people and just drop everything and then just go live somewhere in a farm and do all the do all the manual labor themselves. So, and when you talk to them, they are like the happiest people when they drop all these big investments that they had and everything, given it all to charity, and well, they are more happy than being that influential person. So I think that point of happiness, I think people put more value into their experiences more than that what they have. Well, I know there are some materialistic people, but it goes to, I think it relates more to their narcissistic side more than what if they are really content with what they have or what they already experienced in life. Because for me, I think I am more happy if I get to spend more time with the people that are important to me, or if like uh if I get to travel around the world or something like that, travel to different countries. So yeah, that's why this pandemic really gave me a huge hit, because I cannot go outside of the country that much.
Well, we could talk about money, for instance. It's probably nice to have eight-figure income or have something where you don't ever have to worry about paying bills in your life, but it's just so
Mhm.
topsy-turvy because if you look at memories, memories are forged in something that is unbreakable. I mean, hopefully you don't get dementia where you lose them, but at the same time, it's so important that you have these moments. And the craziest thing is, you don't know what memory is going to get stuck into your head. Like I have a
Mhm.
relatively good IQ only because my memory is so freaking strong. I remember things from when I'm 2 years old, stuff that's so nostalgic to me. And what I like to do in my free time is I've basically lived in the same area my whole entire life. So I've lived in multiple different houses. So I can, if I ever have these stress days or those days where it seems like it's too much and I need to go get a breather, or go take a drive or something, I'll get in my car and I'll drive to all my old houses and I'll look at the old house and I'll just remember all these memories that I had of being little, walking around the house, all these experiences that I had, the time I built a fort, the time I got stitches in my backyard. And even though some of them might be painful, they're the best, I would say, levelers of who you are as a person. They're things that you might be bad at the time, but they're so beneficial to your life later down the road.
Yes, that's true. It's really the memories that make us what we have. What that's what they emphasize, especially in Inside Out, the movie. They have the core memories that they talk about there, and that's what makes you who you are. So, like for example, me, I lived in the same area all my life, and I just moved out after university, and that's common for most Asians. Like we live with our family until we get married off, and my
That sounds
memories all.
horrible. Oh my God, get married off.
Well, that's the term, but traditionally we have to
I
for
wanted to
women
hear
we
like
have
I
to
fell
live
in
with the
love and then we went out. No, it's like I got married off.
yeah. Well, traditionally for women, it is traditional for women to live with their husband's family after here in our, uh, here in our air place. Or if we don't live with our husbands, we just get a new house ourselves or something like that and build a family. So until then, you are part of this community where you grew up in, and that's why my memories are surrounded by everybody, and I still see all the people that I have the important memories with. Like my childhood friend is still my friend, and I always see them during the weekends and stuff like that.
Cosplay too. I didn't even know you were such a big cosplay fan.
Yeah, I used to cosplay back in college. It was one of my university friends who got me into it, and then it just became a hobby. I competed and stuff like that, and then I
Competed.
became yeah.
Well, how do you compete in cosplay? Just have a better costume?
Well, you build your own costume. Then we do a skit for performance, and we get judged based on that, the quality of the costume and the quality of the performance. So it's like a glorified beauty pageant, something like that.
That's so interesting to me because I have a couple buddies who like love going to cosplay conventions around here. And I used to, as a kid, I would be like, that's so nerdy. I don't like that. But then now I understand it a little bit more after going to one. Like I didn't have a costume or anything. I was really admiring all the work that people put into these costumes, but it's like an expression of oneself. How many times do
Mhm,
you walk around in the world and you can't really say what you want to say? You can't think how you want to think. You can't be who you want to be because of the fact of something else is telling you that you can't. You got to play this dull down version of yourself rather than, truly let the nerd out, I would say, or let yourself be known. And I think that was
mhm,
important because when I went to cosplay, there was nobody judging other people based on what they were wearing. They were admiring and giving compliments to the fact that someone was able to put the time and effort to build this thing. And I'm like, that's what the world needs to be like. We need to have that sweatpants confidence when we go into the store where you don't have to worry about some person judging you because you don't have your hair up or you don't have a certain type of style to you, you don't have the best of clothes. I'm like, when you can truly not judge somebody else off of what they look like and be able to just look inside of yourself and judge that. That's the most important thing. You should
mhm,
judge who you are as a person by putting a good energy out for people to be able to consume.
mhm. Well, my manager asked me why I cosplay when they found out. I don't really post it much on my social media aside from, well, I have a separate cosplay account from my personal
You
account,
just
so
send me
people
that
at
one. I
work
gotta
don't
follow
know.
that one.
Yeah, it's on Instagram. I'll send it to you. So they asked me why I cosplay. So they thought it was just a form of escapism. And I said, well, there are characters that I like that they have the characteristics that I wanted to be. Like, for example, this character from Attack on Titan. I wanted to emulate their leadership and their um they were very intelligent and very strategic when it comes to handling matters. So I wanted to cosplay them because I wanted to emulate whatever personality they have that I don't have currently. And wearing that costume, it's like I have I am a different person. Like if you saw those cosplay pictures that I posted on my podcast account, they were all male. So it was like a different experience for me being, well, a different gender. So when I stepped into the convention, they don't see me as this person who is a woman who is working a 9 to 5 job. They see me as this commander of the scouting legion in Attack on Titan. And there were girls who wanted to I got a lot of girls during that convention.
Yeah, it's like I remember seeing a girl in a Joker outfit, and people were like, you can't be Joker, you're a girl." And I'm just looking at it like the costume is spot on. Like that's the whole
Mhm,
point of the thing, is being able to capture the presence of it. Now, when it comes to documentaries, I will say I don't want to watch an Abraham Lincoln documentary and then see some person that looks nothing like Abraham Lincoln in it. I want to see someone that's probably, but that's a true documentary biography type thing. You want to see the
mhm,
character cast a role, but when it comes into anime, I think one of the most important things, for instance, Spider-Man. Stan Lee talks about he gave him a mask because he wanted any kid, no matter your race, no matter your gender, to envision themselves inside of that costume and be able to picture themselves. So you can daydream as a kid. That's one of the most important things that even adults really don't do. I think we daydream on like stupid things like what are we going to do when we get home? But daydream used to be like your mind would go off on these fantasy adventures like a movie. You would be a superhero. You would be all these characteristics. I'm like, did the creativity just get turned down like a dimmer switch? What happened? Because
mhm,
I used to daydream all the time. I think that's why I never learned math, was because I'd be in the middle of class staring at a fish tank and thinking about what I'm gonna, if I was a superhero, what would happen. And I think that's important for people to have, is that little
mhm,
spark. You don't have to be a certain age where the creativity or where the imagination stops, but there's a point
mhm,
where it does happen and you just start thinking about real world problems. And I'm like, maybe that means you have to prioritize having that expression, having that type of thing inside of your mind that you can be able to escape to. Like you said, your managers were saying a form of escapism. If it is,
mhm.
it is. But everyone needs an escape. We all need that little happy place. Like if I had to ask you, when you go to your happy place, what is your happy place?
Well, my happy place is definitely those conventions, because as a kid I don't have a lot of friends. And
I'm your friend.
um yeah, okay, well, friends.
Hmm.
So there was actually this one good speech by Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters. He's also a cosplayer. So I think it really gives definition to what why we do this. So when he goes to a convention, he actually goes like this character. It's No Name from a Ghibli film. So he wears this huge mask and costume, so nobody knows it's Adam Savage underneath all that. And when he goes to a convention, he felt that he was being accepted. He's not being judged, and He's not the Adam Savage that we see on TV. He's just this geek who enjoys cosplay and bonds with the friends that he meets in that community. So I think that was my happy place, and that's why I couldn't leave it, even if I became more busy because of my work. And I now I wanted to see more happy faces in the in conventions. So that's why I joined this organization where we organize all these conventions around the country, so that so that I can see more happy teenagers or happy college kids go to this convention and share the happiness that I once felt when I joined the community.
It's crazy because what I consider a rare and like I'm just so kind of a little bit jealous of is the people, because we could talk about the levels of fame, for instance. When you want to be an actor, when you want to be a comedian, when you want to be a artist or producer or something, your face is attached to whatever you're creating. People see you. So if you're walking on the street and you're Brad Pitt style person, they're going to be like, it's Brad Pitt. You know, you're going to notice that guy. But if you're a voiceover person, if you're a person that does an anime and does a voice, you don't, your face isn't attached to that. Someone that's interested in voice acting or cartoon animation might know who you are, but a lot of people don't. My buddy is he's a aspiring voice actor, and we were talking back and forth, messaging back and forth. He goes, yeah, I want to be just like this guy. And I'm like, who is that? And then he names off the person. I'm like, that's the voice of Goku, my childhood. What? And it's like, you don't even realize, because all you do is you're attached to that character. That's a level of fame, something I'm a little bit jealous of, because I think everybody wants to be in the spotlight. But then there's the rare, exceptional people that don't really want to be in the spotlight. They don't really care if people recognize them in a store. They just want whatever they're creating to be known for, something a kid can dream about, something a kid will draw pictures of, something a kid will aspire to want to be one day, you know, have the strength of Goku or have this type of mentality of Vegeta or something like that. And I think that's so freaking important, because we could talk about like there always has to be, yeah, even that drive-through person, someone's got to do it, right? Well, someone's also got to be the person that doesn't care about the fame, but being able to mold young minds to a point where they have some hope a little bit left, because that's one thing that does get robbed from you as you get a little bit older. The hope starts to
Mhm.
change when you realize how the world works, depending on where you're from, sure, but you're not as like creative as you probably were as a kid, because life kind of takes over. You start developing bigger issues, bigger problems, your priorities change. And I'm like, man, if we can get back to, like, I watch my grandfather, for instance. He plays with
Mhm.
my little nephew who's like 3 years old, and he's like a child. And I'm like, why are you, you're coloring? What are you doing? He's like, you don't understand. I didn't have a childhood. And I was like, what do you mean? When he was 16 or 17, he went right into the war. He didn't get to do anything. He had to do that. And then his dad died, and he had to come back after a couple of years to be able to take care of his sisters and his mom. And he was like, I didn't have that. I had to be a man at such a young age. I didn't get to experience my 20s or anything like that. And I'm like, I get it. Trying to find that childhood. I think we're all looking for that inner kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That reminds me of this one old lady I met in the convention when I was in Singapore. We actually call her Auntie Shirley, and now I think last month she celebrated her 86th birthday, and she's still cosplaying until this day.
What does
I
she eat to
and
live that long?
well, Asian grandparents really live that long. Asian grandparents live up to over 100, I think, and I think a lot of American grandparents too.
I think, yeah, but they have like this weird, it's different because like you hear kids my age that are dying over here from like health issues. And then like my grandpa,
Mhm.
smoked like a pack a day for like 50 something years, and he's perfectly fine. He's like 88 years old. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, man. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, for Auntie Shirley, I think she eats a lot of the things she eats are healthy, like seaweed soup and things like that. But what really hit me was when we asked her, why are you still cosplaying and
Oh,
in
wait, I
this
thought you were going
age?
to ask her, why are you still alive? I was like, oh my God.
No. 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 So we asked her why she's cosplaying. She said it's actually her son's influence. Her son was the first one who got into the hobby, and then she, as a way to bond with her son, she wanted in on the hobby as well. And so she started making costumes herself. And that's when she really got into it. And I think she was around 70 something years old when she started. And she's still going at it. And now she's more popular than her son in the community.
I talked to a past guest a while back, like when I was on episode 400, and she got into Bigfoot, and I was wondering why she was interested in Bigfoot. She's like, "Well, my son's really into it, so this is how we connected. This is, Then I started seeing a bunch of stuff, and now I think Bigfoot's real." And I'm like, "All right, explain that real quick." But the fact that you can get involved into something because you're trying to connect with the person you care about. I don't like going, mowing the lawn or doing lawn things, but my grandpa's always out in the backyard fixing the lawnmower. And I'm like, shit, it's a way to connect. You know what I mean? There's so much stuff we take
Mhm.
for granted when you're a kid that when you get older, you start to prioritize on when you're realizing those moments are gone. I miss every single restaurant, every little thing now compared when I was a kid and I was on my cell phone. I wanted to be at home playing my PlayStation, all these types of things. I'm like, damn, I wish I could go to a TGI Fridays and just talk about life, talk about all these things that are going on, these things that and I guess that's part of being a kid. But at the same
Mhm.
time, it's crazy how that developmental things change, even with the creativity being gone, your priorities change on what would you consider valuable, more about your memories. I think the hardest thing that you can lose is your ability to remember all the times, whether they were good or bad. That is the scariest thing to me. I think I was talking to someone who that's why she got into photography, being able to
Mhm.
capture those moments because you don't know if one day you hit your head or one day you just can't remember these certain things. I think there's everything lies dormant. We can talk about samurai swords, for instance, when they believe that it was carrying their ancestors. It was a tradition, it was passed on, like kind of like a place. If you've ever been to a place that has experienced severe trauma, you can feel the stink lingering in the walls. Well, the samurai sword, for instance, is carried on a journey. It's usually used in battle, and it becomes an heirloom a little bit too. It's a piece of
Mhm.
your ancestors. To think that this thing has seen memories or holds some type of core presence or energy to it, maybe one day we might have technology that might be able to pull that out. You'll be able to find out like what happened in this house 20 years ago and why
Mhm.
is it $10,000 cheaper than all the other homes.
Like an Assassin's Creed.
Yes, like the Animus. That is, I talked to a genealogist and she didn't really understand what the game was. But I was like, do you think one day they'll be able to check our DNA, like a certain code in there, and be able to pull out memories from like our family or ancestors? I think 100% that's possible. I think it all lies dormant inside of us. The reason why we think like we do, the reason they say, there was a test on rats. They would shock this rat whenever like they would light this candle that would give off a certain scent. And when the babies, after a couple generations, like a couple litters were born, those babies had this genetic fear of
Mhm.
that smell. They feel like they were going to be shocked. And I was like, that means that it's passed down through genetic memory. What genetic memory do we? Why am I afraid of heights? I don't get it.
I think there it's something that I read up upon, like our evolution. That's why humans are predisposed to this type of climate, and that's why we have gingers and stuff like that. It's that because we adapted to our surroundings and stuff like that. And
This is a
I think
weirder conversation than the first time you were on.
yeah. Well, before we only talked about swords.
And now we're
But it would
talking
be
about
cool.
everything.
Yeah, it would be cool though if they can pull out the memories from the source, because there are a lot of mysteries to be solved there. Like, for example, who really killed this particular person, right?
Yeah, until you
And we
find out
can
the
all
sword that you have killed like 5,000 people, you're like, oh my God, I am harboring a fugitive, basically.
I'm sorry.
You alive still?
Yeah, sorry, I lost my audio.
I think it's that'd be pretty interesting. I think it would get people more interested because I think one thing that's probably dying now or transferring over to a new form is probably
Mm-hmm.
museums. I think museums were probably hit the hardest during the pandemic. And I have a buddy that's a
Yeah.
paleontologist who went to the tar pits where all these mammoths would fall in this giant tar pit and get solidified. And he was talking about, he was like,
Mm.
yeah, a lot of people don't really care to explore this type of stuff even before the pandemic. And now that like they couldn't do it, there's a couple people in there, but it's very interesting stuff. And I'm like, it's going to take a new form. How long until you're able to pull the genetic memory out of a samurai sword and be able to CGI a hologram to the point where you have this like, I don't know, like you have like you get to see the whole entire samurai battle that was with that sword based on this what the memory
Oh.
of it is.
That's a new plot for the next Assassin's Creed for sure.
The new one's coming out. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
I own them all by the disc, and I beat them all 100%. Which one was your
Wow.
favorite though? Which one was your favorite?
Oh, I think I really enjoyed Brotherhood, but maybe that's because that's the first game I bought with my own money.
I think I like them all. I think Odyssey was my
Mhm.
favorite because it happens like that's what I
Oh
think is
yeah.
it's important about those games is not only they look really cool and they're really fun to play, but the fact that like they really teach history in a way that's why I
Mhm.
think your podcast is important. It teaches a lot of things that a lot of people aren't really going to learn about in school. And then nobody's going to take the time to want to go search out that information unless you're specifically doing something with that topic. But when they come across a podcast and they're hearing you talk about samurai swords or talk about history of these things, that's important because Japan has what, a 5,000-year-old history? Like they're doing stuff they don't even remember why they're doing it. It's just been for so long that they were doing things. And I'm like, that's fascinating to me. Like, where did that come from? I like to find the origins of things. I love ancient history. I love seeing where this stuff goes. And to think that one day we'll be able to go into a simulation or a machine that can pull that out. I'm like, yes,
Oh,
please, whenever you're ready.
yeah. That's why I think I was so excited when Egypt announced that they will have this whole parade for their pharaohs. Have you seen that one?
What?
Yeah, it was a project of their president. So they built a new museum just for the history of the pharaohs and the pyramids and all that. And they transported the sarcophagus of all these pharaohs that they dug up from the pyramids, and they made this whole parade that is meant for royal kings and queens just for that for that one. And it was so fascinating to watch.
If you could pick a time period to live in, what time period would you want to live in?
Oh, definitely not the World War era, but maybe around Victorian would be interesting, or the time of the pharaohs.
Why would you want to live in the Victorian times?
I think Victorian times was around when a lot of art forms began to blossom, and a lot of the fashion stuff that they came up with during the Victorian era, they still influence us here right now in a way.
Well, okay,
And I
what
think I
what
want to
fashion are we talking?
experience that.
What fashion are we talking about here? Because if you're talking about the white wigs, I have a little fun fact of why they created those.
Shit. Shit, go ahead.
So the wigs, you know how they say big wigs, right?
Uh-huh.
You know that it just somehow now becomes like a sign of wealth. You know what it was actually intended for?
Um for who?
Well, it was intended to hide syphilis.
Oh.
So what happened was these people would create these wigs because during syphilis, your hair falls out. You get these lesions on your
Uh-huh.
head. It looks like your skin. You look like a zombie, basically. But so
Mm-hmm.
one of the most interesting books I've ever read is called The Art of Butchery by Dr. Lindsey
Mm-hmm.
Fitzharris that talked all about 19th century Victorian medicine and Victorian surgery. People's noses would fall off from syphilis, and there's a surgeon back then that would take your thumb or your big toe and he'd put it as your nose, and it sounds like it would be awful looking, but he did it in such a way that it actually looks like a nose a little bit. I'm like, wow, like,
Oh.
but that's the whole point of like big wigs and all this stuff. And I'm like, I do
Mm-hmm.
like the Victorian times. Mostly I like the Renaissance period
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm fascinated with Leonardo da Vinci because of Assassin's Creed.
Ah,
But
okay.
the inventions, the workings, the art, it was a lot brighter and a lot better in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we pull from that, but there was like this more, it was like an era of expression and creativity that really hit a peak.
Mm-hmm.
We use a lot of technology to do stuff for us now, but I still have old paintings that are sitting around in my house that I found at thrift stores, and I was like, you threw this away? Like someone threw this away? Like Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night that I stare up at whenever I'm recording a podcast. It's that creativity when you can truly admire something like that and you can pull yourself out of wherever headspace you're in to truly sit and take in a painting,
Mm-hmm.
sit and take in the times when you're researching things in history, for instance. You're able to look at different perspectives and look at different ideas and see in that time thinking and be able to kind of sit in that kind of like I don't know if you've ever researched something for so long you feel like you're thinking in the mindset of whatever those people were thinking. that's a skill, and that's something very hard to put yourself in, to be able to forget everything that's around you in this time period and bring yourself back to the period back then in your own mind, like a book can do with a story reading.
Mhm. Mm, yeah, I think uh, what you said about Leonardo da Vinci, it reminded me actually of the Da Vinci Code.
What, secrets everywhere, numbers?
Yeah, I think I got a lot into cryptology back then, and I read all the books, and even there was actually a book by the same author, and it actually set me in the path that I'm in right now. I'm actually a software engineer, and that set me up to learning how to code, how to hack, how to everything.
Does it get crazy? Because I think I read one chapter out of the coding book because my cousin is really into like the software programming and all those types of
Mhm,
things. And I was reading like the first, it took me 4 days to read that first chapter. I had to keep going back because every time I would get down a sentence, I'd be like, what are they talking about? But then you start realizing the zeros and the ones, they all are a coded
mhm,
message inside of something. It's being able to encrypt things. And I was like, yo, like if you can figure this out and you can sit through it, like where most people will be like, why does this printer printing out zeros and ones when really it's an SOS or a message or something like that? It's like Morse code fascinated me with that, like being able to
mhm,
beep 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 beep. There's a person that broke out of an insane asylum because he heard the code to be able to unlock his cell, and he was able to remember what that was to be able to put in the proper code, and broke out. And then they were suing the medical facility. The medical facility is like, how the hell are we supposed to know he was an expert Morse code person? Like that's not a random, like that's something you need to include in the documents that we get when we get this patient. But I'm like, that's skill. Like,
mhm,
why would you imprison someone? Like there's for instance, my best example is in I think it's Los Angeles or San Francisco. There was a bunch of homeless people that they
mhm.
snuck into one of the power lines and they routed power from the power line into their tent, and they got arrested for that. And I was like, give that person a job. Like that's something I can't do on my best day. And I'm like, that's like there's people that are advanced that just don't care about the whole money, don't care about the whole fame, and they're doing amazing things. But to them, it seems normal.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what fascinated me most in this profession is, well, we get a lot of YouTube channels now about this one. It's called scam baiting. So basically, we intentionally get targeted by phone scammers,
Oh
email
my
scammers, and
God.
everything
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, and I tried it once, and I tracked that. Well, that guy, he messaged me pretending to be this big K-pop artist.
Did you beat the crap out of them?
I tracked him down, and he's actually from Pennsylvania, so I can't do anything.
Oh, give me his address. I'll go see him right now.
Really.
I feel like that movie Jay. I don't know if you ever seen Jay and Silent Bob, but like a bunch of people are
Mm-hmm.
talking trash on these guys on the internet. And then they
Uh-huh.
found out where every single one of these people that commented something on their video and found out where their location was and went to their house and go, did you say this? And it's like a little kid. He's like, yeah. And they just go, okay. They throw the papers, they grab the kids, start beating the crap out of them. I'm like,
Oh my
that
god.
so many, there's like it dives down this weird world. Like for instance, I had saw an advertisement the other day. It was like, now you can track or block phone scanners. It's an app that'll block or screen the
Mhm.
call. And I'm like, why are we at a point where we need an app like that? Shouldn't we just try and eliminate the source of all these scam things? People are able to hide your
Actu-
VPN so they can't be traced. People catfish other
mhm.
people on the internet. And you're just like, don't you have better shit to do? Like a bonsai tree. I've trimmed my bonsai tree. It takes forever, but it keeps me busy.
Mhm. Well, the thing is, a lot of people are paid to scam people. So, I don't know if you know this channel, Scambaiter or Kitboga. They actually do a better job of catching scammers. So basically, there is this huge office of scammers somewhere in India or something. Then these scammers get paid uh to be phone scammers, and they target like old people living alone and without anybody. So they
Just
They
crack my
scam them out
knuckles.
of their pension money.
Oh, that happened to my great grandfather before he passed away.
Uh-huh.
My dad told me, he goes, your great grandfather got scammed. And I was like, what? And I was probably 14 at the time. And he was
Uh-huh.
like, somebody called, and my great grandfather, his hearing was shit. I mean, you're
Mhm.
97. It's gonna not be you're not gonna hear the wings of a bird. You're gonna be pretty out of
Mhm.
the loop on some things. Um, but some person called my great grandfather and was like, pretending to be my dad, said my dad's name and
Oh
said,
my
I'm
god.
stuck in jail. I need you to send me $3,000. And my great grandfather kept asking my dad every time he saw him, you're ever going to get me back for that $3,000 I sent you? And my dad was like trying to explain what a scam call was, but the man still had a landline, like with the long cord and stuff. He never had a cell phone. So it was like,
Mhm.
it's very hard for him to be able to understand. And it just makes me wonder, like, I'm so vanilla, or I'm so like mellow when it comes to like, I don't know shit about technology. I don't have an Amazon, Alexa, whatever you want to say. I don't have any of that. But like, when I'm an old man, is it going to be like that? Like, am I going to be so out of the loop where I'm just getting robbed left and right and I don't even know it? Like, I talk about, for instance, we're all digital currency now. Like, money's being
Mhm.
transferred over to ones and zeros. Do I actually have that money? Or is that just like, no, we're going to start paying with numbers now? If you have a number in your account, there are people that can move that one from $100 to all the way to you have 1 cent. And I'm like, hang on a second. How is this possible? And how are people smart enough to be able to do that? I just want to make sure I never have to worry about getting food.
That reminds me, there's this big bank heist that happened years ago. That was well, these people, they are part of,
I'm sorry.
they program the system
So
of the
different from our
banks.
first conversation. I love it.
Yeah, these people, they program the system of the banks, and what they do is, because you transact there in a bank, sometimes there are cents left over, like 599 cents, something like that. So what they did is that those 99 cents that you wouldn't notice in your account, they transfer it in their account. So it added up, and it became millions and millions from all the accounts that goes through the system every day. And
Oh my
they
God.
didn't get found out until years later, I think.
What the hell? Why are people so interesting?
Oh,
That's so interesting to me. It's like that guy that lived in a grocery store for like 20 years and nobody knew. And I
oh.
was like, oh my God, like people just like, you can put your mind to something, you can do it. Like, I think that's so
Mhm,
important, especially about like when you hear tales and folklores and stuff like that. They have a
mhm,
purpose, they have like a meaning or a moral to the story. Like people, I don't know if you saw on Twitter was trending like a while ago, like a couple months ago. Helen Keller was trending because people are like, she
oh,
didn't exist. And I was like, what? And like you start to look at it through their eyes, is like, yeah, imagine a person that was deaf, blind, and all these different types of things wrong with her.
mhm.
Then you have no excuse on anything in your life when that person accomplished so much.
That do you know, there was this thing that happened in my country a few years back again. So of course, the Philippines was hit a lot by World War II, and there were a lot of Japanese soldiers in the country that time. So there was this one soldier who was found by, I think, forest rangers, and he was hiding in the forests for about more than 70 years, and he still thinks that the war is still going.
Oh yeah, he was found in like a tree. He was still up in the tree because the war ended and
Yeah.
no one called him to let him know that it was over. So he was in a tree for like 30 something years.
Yeah, and he said that he won't believe that the war is over until his general tells him
And they
to
had him
surrender.
call. He had him call.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating to me that you can, after a while, don't you go like, hey, what the hell? Like it's been like a month. I would probably figure out. But maybe, I mean, that's a loyal person in my mind.
Yeah, I think that they had to fly the general here to ask him to surrender his sword and his weapons and everything.
We need more people like you in the army, son.
Yeah, well, most people in the army can be bought off. nowadays.
It's so crazy how everything has changed. I remember studying a you ever heard of the night witches?
No.
So there was a group of women during World War when we were going against the Nazis, and they would call these elite group of women night witches because the people
Mhm,
on the boats when because they would fly in these crop dusting airplanes. So they're airplanes that are open, and it's like in the middle of like I forgot where they were at, but it was somewhere that's like extremely cold, flying in like -30-degree weather in an airplane, in an open airplane, and their outfits. Because what happened was the men went off to war and the women stayed back.
mhm,
They wanted to fight and they wanted to help out because we needed it. And so what they would do is they would take the men uniform, they would rip to where it would fit them, be able to fit them. They're wearing oversized coats and things of that sort, and they couldn't fit in their own boots or the boots of the men. So they would stick like clothes in the boots to be able to
mhm,
fit. So they fit right. And they would fly in these crop dusting airplanes at the dead of night, like in the middle of night, and they would drop bombs on these Nazi ships. And they said that the sounds, they wouldn't make a peep. You wouldn't even know they were coming, but it would sound like witches on a broom, just the little light hum of the engine. And this group of, I think it was in Russia, but these group of women were like I mean, they did such amazing things that don't really get talked about. It's like secret history is where I found it. And I'm like, why isn't this being known? It's like, oh, it's because they were women. It's like, hang on a second.
mhm.
We're people here. It doesn't matter your gender. If you're fighting on my side, you're a friend of mine. I don't care who you are.
It's like the story of Mulan. Well, she's a
Yeah.
Disney character, but she is a real person.
She had to dress as a guy to be able to fight. I'm like, at this point, you got to
Mhm,
understand that we're tackling something bigger. We got to put down our notions or the ideas of thinking. And it's crazy because even in some cultures over there, they still think in that mindset. And I'm like, oh my God, like
mhm.
I get it if you're like it's normal to you because that's where you're from. But it's like, man, at that point, any hand's a helping hand.
Yeah, actually. Well, during warfare, I think the samurais, they were, well, not the samurais, the ninjas, they were smart enough to use like geishas and stuff for their missions. So the geishas helped kill all these important men, and I think, and that was written in history. But in some history, the presence of women in warfare, it's not really written down.
It's kind of murder's a fun topic. I like the theme of
Mhm,
this. uh I think it's crazy to see how much we've changed in such if you really look at it a few hundred years. You know, we've done so much and it's
mhm,
really weird to look at like what's the future going to be like? Are we going to be living on Mars? Are we going to be on this colony up there living on there? It's insane to me to think it's everything's so changed. I think a little bit it needs to slow down and focus on some other areas because it seems like the areas of importance I would say aren't the ones that should be highlighted. Like we should try and fix this mental health crisis. We should try and fix a
mhm.
lot of things when it comes to technology and building up our countries as much as possible to make sure that nobody ever has to struggle, nobody ever has to really be poor or be paying so much to survive. But I guess Mars is so damn fascinating. I don't know. We have people in California, for instance. I bring up this example. They're dying of a drought. They're going through a really
Mhm.
dry season. It's like you're right next to the fucking water. It's like we're discovering Mars because we feel like this Earth one day we're gonna have to leave it. And I'm like, just desalt the water. It's not that hard. I feel like if we have Elon Musk put like 10 minutes of time into it, we could I mean,
Mhm.
we still have people that have walkers with tennis balls on the bottom of it. So I don't know what's happening. I think we can slow down the progress of the iPhone to be able to figure that one out.
Well, iPhone is a scam.
It's all a scam.
Yeah, well, we already found out that it is a scam, that the updates, it slows down the phone eventually.
I
Use
haven't
Samsung.
updated since like I think last December. Like I haven't, I,
uh,
I refuse it. It says install later. I always say no. I'm sorry. For some reason my memory always gets shorter every time I install it, and I'm like, I don't like that.
mhm,
I don't want to have to pay an extra $15 a month to have an extra. They lock it so you only get a certain amount of gigabytes on your phone, and I'm like, just give me the whole
mhm.
phone. I bought it, right? It's mine, right? No, 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 no. It's not yours yet.
that's their way so that when your memory runs out, you buy a new one. But well, in Asia we don't use a lot of iPhones. So that's why I don't understand that much. But well, a lot of people they just use it for flexing here.
What is your main like device that you use? Your laptop?
My phone. I have a Samsung.
Is Samsung better than Apple over there?
Yeah.
See, people say that
Well,
over
at
here,
least the
but like,
memory is not internal.
yeah, see, people say that over here, like, oh, you got to get a Samsung, but most people have an iPhone. I don't know how somehow it just slipped into the market. It got like, I guess all the advertisements, it's kind of like
Mhm.
Coca-Cola doesn't need to do an advertisement because they're so popular. They dominated the market back in the day.
Well, I think that's what Steve Jobs' marketing strategy really helped out on. But if we look back in history, he was rejected by Microsoft.
Bill Gates. I just picture the cardigan man versus the sweater man, and my mind starts going off.
But well, software engineers we don't use a lot of iOS as well, so we don't really understand the hype between that. It's just so hard to it's so hard to code in an iOS. It's so exclusive. You have to pay for everything, so we don't use it.
What about how much of your data is being tracked? Like how much is it more than what has already been released, like with the social dilemma documentary and with a lot of stuff people
Mhm.
talk about their data and stuff? I feel like now it's like even if the conversation with you, if we start talking about coding, I'll check my phone and it'll give me books on coding. And I'm like, hang on a second. I didn't even search that into my phone. You're now like listening into what I'm saying.
Well, you there is sometimes like you go on some site just because you're interested or you accidentally clicked on it, and then the next thing you know, your all the ads that you get is related to that, right?
Yeah.
You can actually track that there is a website on that. um there's a website on that. You can uncheck it and you won't receive any more ads about that. But that's the it's what we call data mining in the industry, that we get a lot of information about the users, and then we give them what they want based on the data that our logic interprets as what they like.
I don't know who my algorithm guy is or whoever's studying my algorithm specifically, but I must piss him off so bad where he's planning to kill me because my Twitter, since the podcast, I'm reaching out to like a bunch of random
Uh-huh.
people. So I'll reach out to cultists and I'll reach out to like people that are like ex cult members, or I'll reach out to religious people, people who are not religious people. And then like my algorithm guys could be like, I don't know how to pin them. I don't know what to show him. I don't know anything. He's reaching out to both sides of the pool. And I'm like, yeah, because I like to keep it interesting. I don't like to be narrowed down. As soon as I start thinking one dude's able to correlate what my next move is going to be, I consider that when you get
Mhm.
boring, you know?
Yeah. Uh, well, I don't. Well, whatever is on your phone and whatever you signed up on, like in Facebook and everything, that's where people actually track you. It's not like I hear some people say that when they inject the vaccines on us, they put microchips to track us. Like, there's nothing else that to track about you. The government already knows it.
I saw a
Your phone
video of
company knows it.
a video of a woman. She put up a phone to her arm and it had like or a metal detector to her arm, and it started beeping in her arm because they fucking they microchipped me, and I'm like, oh god, this is gonna get some people going nuts.
Oh my God.
I don't believe the microchip thing at all,
I
but I'm just like, I
no.
don't know.
No, well, first, the needle is not big enough to big enough to transport a microchip.
You're getting scientific on me. Just call them nuts. Just call them crazy.
Well, some people don't really believe you even if you give them all the scientific facts.
We have a
They just
large
choose what they
portion.
believe it.
We have a large portion of the earth that still are people on this earth that still believe the earth is flat.
Oh yeah, that that grinds my gears actually when I see that. And sometimes I join the Facebook groups just to troll them.
Just what do you say? What do you say? Come on.
I mean, sometimes you just let them believe that you believe that the earth is flat, and then something like when they go, have you seen the edge of the earth or something like that? And then I, and then when they don't come back, like, have you come around?
You gotta be careful not to like get caught up in your own like conspiracy stuff. Like when you start saying like, yeah, the earth is flat.
Ah,
I haven't seen that. And then you end up thinking, you're like, wait a minute, is it? I've never actually, I'm starting to point out plot holes in my own thing. Oh my God, I'm turning into one of them. It's like one of us.
oh my god. Well, there sometimes doctors use that same conspiracy theory angle just to get kids vaccinated. Well, I at least I heard it from one of my friends. She's an intern in in a pediatric hospital, and there was this person. They say that when their kid gets vaccinated, they will get autism and stuff like that. And the doctor was like, didn't you think that it may be China who is spreading all those rumors so that
Don't get me started on China, please. This is my
oh,
one podcast. I haven't ranted on China. I have a lot of issues with them right now.
oh, me too.
Just, I don't like, I found out like, I was listening to an episode and found out that 13 tons of human hair were shipped over here from China and we sent it back. And then
Hmm.
it came from a concentration camp in China. And I don't believe
Oh
that
my
any of
god.
those people were paid to have their head shaved and sent over here. So that gets me. I'm so like, I don't like power controlling other people. And especially in that form is so fucking horrible to me that there's like people that are like, I read a story about a 23-year-old girl in China who logged in her VPN to do her schoolwork or something like that. And 6 hours later, here's a knock on the door and they pick her up and take her into this camp. And she spends a year and a half in this camp. Her credit goes to shit. Everything goes to shit. She owes money now. Her whole entire thing is fucked. Then she gets released. And before she's able to like fully go out, they give her like a medical thing to make sure she's okay and fit to go back into the world. They put her under. She
Hmm.
wakes up and they go, "You're all good to go." And she's like, "What happened?" And they sterilized her. They took away her ability to have kids. And I'm like,
Oh
"What
my
the?
god.
That's so." I'm not, we're not doing it this episode. I'm not doing it. You can come back
No.
on and we can talk about it, but I'm not this episode. I got to have one episode where I don't talk
No,
about
no.
China.
No, no. But it's, well, I think China is like a gentler version of North Korea, I think.
Oh God, if that's gentle.
Well, in the means.
And I've talked to people from over there and they go, well, it's, you're looking at it differently. And I'm like, yeah, I get it because we don't have that going on here. It's so crazy to us.
Mhm,
But it's just crazy how much you don't really realize that the tentacles of business or the tentacles of the power of money can control so
mhm.
much that you lose even human emotion when it comes to things like this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, but you don't want to talk in about China, but
Give me your thought on that, and then
in
you can we can.
yeah. Well, in our country actually, they are slowly smuggling mainland Chinese people, and they build this smuggling centers here, and that they work here, but they are illegal, so they get
Are they
carted
saving them?
off in a no.
Are they forcing
They
them to
get,
work?
yeah, well, they came here voluntarily because they said, well, I got involved with a guy from that one. I didn't know he was illegal, so he told me everything. But he said that he came voluntarily because in mainland China they don't pay him enough, and in here they earn the same as any average worker, entry level worker here, which is more than what they earn in China. So he came voluntarily so that he can save up and everything. But he was illegal, so they don't get to stay in an apartment or a hotel.
Oh,
They just stay for 1 or 2 days in this location, and then they get uh carted off with only the clothes they have or the things that is in their bag, and then they get sent to another location so that the immigration officers won't see them. And that goes on until every day. So that's why I was asking him, like, because they have an office right above our office. We share the same building. So I asked him, so why is it that, I think it was a little rude of me, but I asked him why the his office mates smell when I ride the elevator with them. But that, so he said that's because they don't get a chance to take a bath or anything. They just get transported somewhere they don't know, and they have to live there until the immigration officers come knocking.
Oh man, yeah, we're gonna have to talk about this on another episode. I can't do it on this
Yeah.
one. That's crazy. But
Mm,
Roma, you've given me enough of your time. Where can people find you at?
well, they can find me on my podcast. It's Stories of Saniwa. I am on Anchor and anywhere you listen to podcasts, and also my Twitter is at Stories of Saniwa. My cosplay account is at Twinkle Journey.
You need to send me that. Send me that one.
Okay.
I'll make sure I link it all in the description too. And thanks for listening to this
Thank
episode
you.
of Out of the Blank podcast.